Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, great. Hopefully we can make this as interactive as possible, so try to keep some time towards the end if you do have any questions. And as I thought about this topic and this discussion, just as I was being introduced, let me just give you a little bit of background on myself. I joined PayPal about a year ago. I've been in the payments industry for roughly about 20 years or so, different parts of the world, North America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and Africa. So I have an interesting perspective of the payments landscape, but also have been extremely passionate about how payments connects with the retail industry. So starting with way back when it was physical retail, to seeing the evolution of the displacement of cash and how we had a war on cash. And today, I think we're making great progress on that war on cash, but then ultimately to now a more digital environment and how that experience comes together from both a physical and digital perspective. So I wanted to give you a perspective really where I saw and where I think PayPal can add a lot of value in terms of enhancing the digital experience, enhancing your business, and enhancing what it can do for a retailer. So one of the things I think if you look at the PayPal journey, and what I tried to do here was talk about this idea of value to accelerate growth. Now, when we talk about what that means, and my attempt to explain what it means, you hear a lot about the term wallets. And I think everyone in this room will claim or have heard about wallets. You'll hear often every app, every business, every retailer says, I have a wallet. I think if you go back a couple of years, it would be everyone has an app. Now it's everyone has a wallet. So it's a very cluttered world out there. And that's the first thing. It's extremely cluttered. And what does it mean to a retailer? I think that's the second. And third, what does it mean to a consumer? And then how do you navigate this space? So first, I wanted just to set the stage, a little bit of context setting, right? What is PayPal? I think if this conversation was happening somewhere else in the world, most people in the room would say, yes, I actually know what PayPal is, and that's great. But I think when you take it in the context of the landscape of Asia Pacific and you ask what is PayPal, you get a little bit of a different reaction, a bit mixed. And generally people have knowledge of what PayPal is, or they have a historical view of what PayPal is based on the founders or what they did. But let's step back, right? I think to start with, PayPal definitely is the largest open and independent digital payments platform. And what that means is you often hear about wallets or payment platforms in different parts of the world or countries. And they do exist, but here's where I think the differentiation starts, is PayPal's global. And to be able to build that linkages, those connections globally has taken a long time. But to be able to build that trust and that convenience, that is truly what some of the differentiators are. Right? So one of those things, again, is to be the partner of choice for both consumers and businesses. And how do we do that? I think ultimately, when you think of financial services or payments, we tend to think about the experience of a consumer buying from a seller. So that buyer-seller conversation. But ultimately, it goes well beyond that. It goes about the ability to buy goods in a very safe and convenient way. Buy in a manner that you don't expose your financial credentials. To be able to send money to your friends and family. To be able to buy a sample when you want to buy something and you want to test out something. To be able to buy something when you don't know who that person is. Let's say it's that American consumer wants to buy from someone in Vietnam. I don't know who that is. I don't know that website. I don't know everything. But when I see that PayPal brand mark, it does a lot to address my concerns, and it gives me that sense of confidence. Now, wanted just to give you a level set. I think these are some of our recent public numbers. But again, when you talk about scale, and this is what we think matters, is the number of consumers that are enabled with a PayPal account, the number of merchants that have a PayPal account, the amount of volume that we process, and the growth. So we're starting to see that transformative shift from just being a desktop solution, but ultimately to a mobile-first solution. And when we talk about the context of Asia-Pacific, markets like the Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, these are all digital-first markets where people will be thinking about their phone or their mobile device as their first entry point. And when I joined PayPal, and I think one of the things that I thought was the most interesting point is when someone said, "What do you think PayPal is?" So my answer, thinking I'm very clever and very smart, was I said it's a payments company. It's a financial services company. And what I've learned over the past year, it goes well beyond that. It's actually, if you think about it, what it is at its core is a risk management company. It's the ability to manage risk. And it's that ability to manage risk for both a buyer and seller. And that is fundamentally key. So, I think as you all think about it, whether you're helping a retailer, whether you are a retailer, whether you're someone who plays in that ecosystem, I hope through this discussion I'll give you a sense of where PayPal fits and why it becomes relevant to your business and how it can help accelerate growth. So I talked about this concept of consumers and merchants, and this is where we sit. We sit in this unique position. Unlike other payment schemes, we sit in the middle. So we're managing risk on both sides of the equation. We're managing it for the consumers, and we're managing it for the merchants, right? So that's the first premise here. Now, why do we think PayPal can help grow your business? Why do we think it can help be a driver? And I think as people in this landscape, you often ask yourself, why do I need one more option? How does this help the business? And if those are questions you're tackling, those are good questions, because I'd like to explain where we sit, but at the same time, give you the tools to be able to differentiate the options out there. So when we think about it, we think about our partner success. That's the fundamental thing. We think about how can it drive activation of consumers? If that's one of the things at core to your business, how do you drive activation? Then how do you drive usage, and how do you drive retention? So these are the three things apologies. These are the three things that I want to talk about in a little bit more detail. So activation. One of the things that you think about is, I'll give you sort of a use case or an experience, and let's just say it was a hotel in Thailand that has a website. How do you drive activation of consumers? So that's something that we as a business take care of. That's something that we go on our consumer side of our business, go out and enable the consumer side. So the 235 to 240 million consumers around the world that are now enabled. How do you drive usage? So we're engaging these consumers in ultimately a seamless experience to be able to go in, to be able to go onto that merchant's website, to be able to click, and to have a frictionless experience. And that's fundamentally key. That's fundamentally key to be able to go and have a one-click experience. And so that's something else we do. And then finally, how do you keep these customers engaged and active? So how do you keep them ongoing and being able to continue to use those payment credentials? So again, if it comes all down to that experience and being able to give the consumer choice, safe and secure, but also the knowledge and the information that they'll have through that central entity, in this case, which is PayPal. Now, I wanted to give you, just to get a little bit more detail on some of the things that we try to tackle, and some of the things I hope you can take away. We talk about the customer experience, and that was the first thing, right? So how do we create a better customer experience? How do we reduce the amount of friction in the checkout flow? So that's the first thing. How do we access more customers globally? So again, 240 million customers around the world. And I wanted to just give you some contrast. So often you'll hear about other wallets or other payment systems from parts of Asia that are significantly large. But again, they're solving for a very specific use case. They're solving for one country, those consumers going abroad and shopping online. So it's a very specific use case. Where in the case of what we're trying to do here with PayPal is a degree of ubiquity. So for you as businesses, you want to provide as much choice and as many options for your potential buyers. Conversion. This is something that we've talked about a lot, and I think it's a good reference point when you think about conversion. You want to provide consumers with the ultimate conversion experience, and this is something that we've done a fair amount of work on. Our conversion rate is about 87%, which is about the highest in the industry. So it surpasses the networks, it surpasses both networks in terms of the conversion rate. So again, you may think, when you're enabling a merchant or when you're setting up that business, why does that matter? Well, you don't want dropouts. You don't want people to walk away. You have one chance when you're with that consumer to be able to convert them and to get them through that funnel and that pipe and make sure they have an ultimate experience. Ultimately, you want them to come back. Now, capability, right? So one of the things that we talk about often is not all merchants have resources. Not all businesses have the same level of resources or the IT capability. We've done our own outreaches, and often one of the things we hear is, I don't know how to do this. I don't have tech support. I don't have the integration support. This is beyond my ability. And I would say, the feedback that we have, and when merchants do implement a solution such as PayPal, one of the most common things we hear is it's essentially a self-serve model. That's the first thing for the longest of the longest tail merchants. But the reality is through partners and system integrators, that friction goes away further, right? So to take away that complexity, and that's something that I think we work with our partners very closely. Convenience. One of the things you don't want to do is you don't want to build a solution that works today and then, 2 years from now it's irrelevant. So there's a constant upgrade and there's a constant refresh. You may have seen in the press last week, one of the things that PayPal did was, they recognized that their app was, feeling more cluttered. That app was decluttered and it provided a much more simpler experience. So that needs to be constantly engaged, constantly communicated, whether it's something like an app, tokenization, a better customer experience, more options for consumers, more options for buyers. Confidence. I talked about a little bit about the importance of that risk management. So when you think about it from a business's perspective, you don't want to be investing in figuring out your own risk management solutions, your own fraud solutions. And that becomes a challenge, right? So you want to be able to partner up, whether it's with a partner or whether it's someone like a network or PayPal, frankly, to be able to ensure that that data, whether it's from a buyer or seller's perspective, is in a secure environment. So that becomes really key. And again, if you get a sense of what the experience is when we talk about PayPal, is to be able to manage risk from both the buyer's perspective and the seller's perspective. And to be able to manage both sides of that risk, bring it together, and make an informed decision so that you as a business are selling your goods and services, but at the same time, the buyer is having minimal friction to be able to buy those goods or services. Now, cash. This is something that becomes a bit more of a unique opportunity and challenge in this part of the world. So to be able to take what you have in your PayPal account and to be able to exit it out to your bank account, to be able to withdraw funds straight to your bank account. So if you're a retailer, you want to be able to push your funds into your bank account in a very simple and easy way. So I think as we go across Asia Pacific, this is one of the capabilities that we've developed and we continue to refine, is to be able to create as many connection points with the banking networks out there, the banks in local markets, so that you as a business can send your funds to your bank in a timely way. So that becomes one of the best things that we can do. And ultimately, I think the statement that comes across that we're more than just a button. And historically, I think this is where we're evolving from. Often when people thought about PayPal, it was just the concept of just thinking about it as a button. And the reality I hope that you'll walk away with is that there's so much more. It can do so much more for your business. It can help grow your business. It can provide a better customer experience. And that, I think, is ultimately what's key. Now, we talk about, I've talked about this really, which is just, again, a reiteration of what I've highlighted. It's a two-sided experience, customer confidence, customer convenience. that becomes key. A couple of other points that just to call out is the idea of when you think of a wallet, it should be mobile friendly, and it should have the ability to support multiple currencies. This is something that we do. We provide the ability to support multiple currencies, as well as the idea of being a simple checkout process. And from a PayPal perspective, that is something that we call One Touch, so that you can enable yourself so you don't have to input credentials across a multitude of websites. So when you've enabled yourself, you can, with one thumbprint, enable a one-touch experience. And these are sort of the powerful differentiators from a customer experience and from a merchant experience. Okay. Now, I just wanted to give you some perspective of, you know, the way we would have a conversation ultimately when we're talking to a partner or a business is really, you know, what do you do from a customer experience perspective, right? And this is what should go into your decisions. You know, the formula is really about confidence and convenience and being able to access these different features and have an outcome which obviously drives higher conversion and then ultimately coverage. At the same time, I think one point often when we're talking about our ecosystem, people tend to think about it in terms of a buyer and seller experience from a consumer perspective, but the reality is it goes well beyond that. And I think as businesses, we're seeing an opportunity that it can extend into not just B2C, but B2B as well, being able to support businesses that also want to do mass payouts to their suppliers and their vendors, and having that capability becomes very powerful. And wanted to finally, we've talked about this, but the piece on global access, 200 countries, we support major currencies around the world, and then as well, the ability to have connectivity from a network perspective. Again, it supports MasterCard, Visa, JCB, Diners, China UnionPay. So if you're a merchant, think about the complexities. We talked about that complexity issue. If I want to go set up something, and today I have to go think about, I got to set up MasterCard, I have to go set up Visa, I have to set up JCB, I want to do China UnionPay, I want to do some more. The power of PayPal becomes that integration. So one integration to PayPal then gives you access to all of that. So it comes back to that same view, whether it's on the consumer side or the merchant side, it's that simplicity. So ease of access. And a few other things that we'll just call out. If you're familiar, PayPal provides something that we call buyer protection and seller protection. So it's a unique benefit that we provide our customers. So we protect those transactions. So imagine that you bought a red handbag. That was your intent to buy a red handbag, and instead you got a blue handbag. So, and if the merchant was not willing to satisfactorily, resolve that issue with you, PayPal would step in and address that issue and resolve it and provide that level of protection to both either the buyer or seller. So that becomes a huge differentiator and something that we hear a lot of feedback from the merchant community and our consumers. It's an asset that they love. It's something that they value in terms of the protection. And finally, I just wanted to give you a perspective. One of the things that has changed over the last couple of years with PayPal has been our approach to partnership, to embrace a much more open ecosystem, to partner with different partners, to partner with integrators, to partner with channel partners, to partner with platforms. So I just wanted to give you a perspective of the type of things that we've been doing. We love these conversations. We love partners that want to have these conversations. We love, merchants that want to have these conversations. But some of the more notable ones that I just call out is that a year ago, we partnered up with AliExpress. We've partnered up with Baidu. We've partnered up with both Visa and MasterCard, as well as with banks across different parts of the world. So, and I think what this is really fundamentally the ability to provide choice. choice, and an open ecosystem to leverage our unique assets, but also to complement what our partners have. And that's where hopefully where you get a sense of how PayPal is now approaching the payments landscape, but both the consumer and the merchant experience. And if I have time, I don't know if I have time for questions, but I'll just ask. If not, we can move on. 5 minutes, okay. If there are any questions, happy to take 1 or 2 questions. Sure, please.
I mean, I have one question only. I value seller protection, but I mean, a lot of our customers actually, I feel like they are abusing a bit of buyer protection. I mean, we have certain terms and conditions on website,
Sure.
and PayPal chooses to ignore those and have its own terms and conditions. And customers love it, of course, because they can bypass ours, but it's something that makes our life a bit more difficult. It doesn't happen often, but I mean, is there any particular stand that PayPal has on this issue, or?
I hear your feedback. I mean, it's something that we understand that customers will often try to game the system. I think it is a reality. I think that's why, from a risk perspective, we do try to, while there are a standard set of terms and conditions, which we do follow, at the same time, when we do hear issues or cases which require a bit more resolution or discussion, those are the types that we do get involved in. But to answer your question, I think there's probably not a lot of latitude on something like this, because it's a policy and it's an approach that we try to provide as ubiquitously as possible to as many markets as possible.
So it's PayPal's stand that we would not use websites that conditions.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
It will continue to be a PayPal stand to use its own terms and conditions and not rely on websites' terms and conditions to resolve the cases.
Yeah, I think the reality is that we do need to have a standard set of rules and policies that we operate with. That's the baseline that we operate with. There is one more question.
Yes, I have a question that from your photos about the partners of PayPal,
Yeah.
I see the Chrome here. So can you?
Sorry, could you repeat?
I see the Chrome browser.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
as
Okay.
one of your strategic partners. So can you tell me more about the partnership here?
Sure. I can give you a little bit of context, actually. So in the U.S. market, we've partnered up with Google. Scope of our partnership, at least at this point in time, is the U.S. Again, to provide an experience where PayPal is included in the Google checkout flow, and that you ultimately, from a Google perspective, would have that ability to use PayPal throughout the Google ecosystem. So today, that is it is being rolled out in the U.S. at this point in time. Again, as it expands to other markets in the world, we're evaluating what that roadmap would be, or where it would be best suited. But again, I think that's just more representative of the approach that we're taking, which is a more open ecosystem. And again, recognizing that consumers have choices, consumers have different preferences, but ultimately when we think about where we fit into that ecosystem, it's not necessarily about, it's more about trying to complement what the other solutions out there, for example, like Google. Okay. I will be around. My colleague Fa is also around. We'll be around afterwards, so if there's any further questions, happy to take them. And I think on behalf of PayPal, we're thrilled to be partnering with the team here. It's our privilege and honor. And again, I'd just like to thank the organizers for the opportunity. And thank you very much. Have a great day.